A note. Following advice from work-life imbalance may lead to action being taken by HR, your family, the authorities, or higher powers. Welcome to Work-Life Imbalance, an advice show focusing on workplace and lifestyle issues. Any resemblance to actual advice, living or dead, or actual wisdom is purely coincidental. I'm your monstrous manager, Frank Eastman.
And hooray, I am your lovable office companion, Derek Lewis.
Today, we'll be talking about making friends at work in the deep dive before we address some audience questions and issues from the internet. But first, time for the daily stand-up. So, I wanted to talk to you today about the literary treasure that is Chuck Tingle.
Okay,
Have you
I don't think I know what Chuck Tingle is.
You have not heard of Chuck Tingle? All right, Chuck Tingle is a authorial powerhouse who was nominated for the 2016 Hugo Awards as a joke by an online troll community of, online troll community.
Yeah.
He is a hyper niche, absolutely crazy ass gay erotica author.
Well, you're
with
speaking
titles,
my language.
Titles such as "My Billionaire Triceratops Craves Gay Ass,"
Oh, the perennial classic.
"Pounded by President Bigfoot," and "Space Raptor Butt Invasion."
Wow, so I'm seeing a decent pattern here of like cryptozoological
Ass fiends.
Yes, cryptozoological ass fiends. I mean, I get that. I get that's weird, but it's an underserved market, and obviously
it is.
I mean, he has seen the opportunity and is he has seen the opening, if you will, and he is filling it.
The thing that I sort of came, it wasn't during my usual jaunts into the dark places of the internet,
Right.
but he has started writing
Children's
about
novels.
children's books. Basically stuff on anthropomorphic either objects or concepts,
Like the
so
well-hung lamp.
some of his later works include "I'm Gay for My Living Billionaire Jet Plane,"
Oh, Christ. There's an anime about that, so it's not...
"Pounded by the Gay Color-Changing Dress."
Wait, is that a second title that just says pounded by something?
Yeah, that's kind of I think, one of his things. And then some of his crowning achievements are "Pounded in the Butt by My Own Butt." and then, like, "Pounded in the Butt by My Book, Pounded in the Butt by My Own Butt" by Chuck Tingle.
God, why?
So this is the worst of the purple prose, but he's become something of like, I guess, an internet touchstone. Just because his stuff is so crazy that it's obviously not meant to be taken seriously in any way, shape,
Right.
or form, and the writing is truly atrocious.
I was about to say that my next question is, how's the writing?
Oh, it is purple and terrible all the way down. Like, it's not necessarily readable. It's more, I think, joke fiction, which was why, like, it was intended to be an insult to the awards that this troll community had essentially thrown the vote and gotten this guy put up for the award.
Right.
But then he kind of, ran with it.
So I mean, is this kind of like Halle Berry showing up to receive her own Razzie type of level? Like he's really leaned into it, even though it wasn't actually like you're not supposed to receive your Razzie in person. It's supposed to be, let's all make fun of them while they're not here. But then when they show up, it's like, oh, we can't really do the stuff we were going to do because it's really mean about you.
I guess so.
I don't want to live in this world anymore, Frank. It's hilarious that he's doing this, but I just have to hope that it's really just kind of one of those things where you release it into the ethos, or into the ether, but nobody actually partakes of it. But
Oh no, Derek. There's a giant cult following now.
Okay, so is it one of those things where they buy it for the goof and then they stay for the butt pounding, or is this like 100% goof?
I think it's 100% goof. I don't think anybody's here for the quote unquote erotic writing. Having witnessed it, like it's definitely like explicit. This is not something you want to, I don't know, read to your grandmother or anything.
So how long are these works? Are we talking like, a pamphlet size, or are we talking like 200 to 300 pages of low quality smut?
No, I think they're short story length. I will admit I haven't read many of them, but most of it seems to be. I have to do my research, Derek. I
was about to say, you said I will have to admit, as if like that was a bad thing that you had only read a few of them. Journalistic integrity aside, like there's not a lot of room in my head, and I don't want to fill it with Chuck Tingle literature. That's not my go-to, I think. And I swear to Christ, Frank, if I see any of this shit pop up in my inbox, like where you have emailed me a gift of these books, I will return them. I will print them out and 95 fucking theses, nail them to your door in protest.
All right.
I do not want that on my fucking Kindle, Frank.
So I guess now would not be the time to tell you that he has got a podcast produced by the Welcome to Night Vale people, where various famous personages, well, famous in an internet sort of way, personages read his short stories.
All right, what's it called?
What's it called, you might ask?
What's it called?
Pounded in the Butt by My Own Podcast by Chuck Tingle.
I should have guessed. I should have guessed. Oh, you are the reason I am now typing "pounded in the butt" into Pocket Casts. This is on you, Frank.
You're gonna get some weird ads after this, Derek.
Oh God! After this podcast, I get weird ads already. My phone doesn't even want to type that. Like, I've had to autocorrect this 4 times.
No, Derek, don't do it.
All right. we got it. So this is so fucking dumb. Oh my God. Oh, they're all like half an hour long. Holy shit. Oh God. Can we please go to the deep dive? And it's not about butt stuff, please.
Well, it is about making friends at work, so.
You have tainted my beautiful, positive message. Oh, God. Anyway, deep dive to the rescue.
All right, Derek, please take us away. Like Calgon.
All right, today on the deep dive, I want to talk about making friends at the office. Now, we have often focused on the more negative aspects of office life. Noisy eaters, noisy eaters on conference calls, noisy eaters in your cubicle. Really focusing on noisy eaters. No, we've talked about bad bosses and all the things that make office life not necessarily unbearable, but a little bit less pleasant. But today I want to focus on the good part of working in an office with a lot of people is that the chances for making friends are fairly high.
It's never happened, Derek.
I was getting there. tend to make relationships really quickly, more or less. I mean, it's not like first day I show up with like cookies and have to be best friends by end of business day, the first day that I work somewhere. But I tend to to talk, and I tend to mingle with people and try to figure out like who is part of my tribe, like who are people that I think that I can get along with. And
All right.
it's not often that spawns into immediate bromances, but it has happened before. So, Frank, what? I'm trying to put this nicely, without without putting you on blast too much. Whenever you get into a new role, what do you do to try to find friends at the office?
It's one of those things that seems to happen. I don't necessarily go in like, oh, I'm starting on a new team, I'm going to make some friends.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of a work and not work at not work kind of person, which I say and then recognize that the entirety of my friend group consists of people that I have worked with in the past.
Right.
But I think those tend to naturally develop over time.
Right.
Yeah, and I would not necessarily put myself on a spectrum of overly friendly people.
So, and I was about to go directly into that. I think that whenever you go into a new office, you kind of scope out the people that are there, and you kind of get this idea of almost like the levels in a video game. You can tell who is going, as far as friendships, are going to be easy mode, and which ones are essentially like late game bosses. And so, you start with like the cheery people. They're easy mode. They're the ones that you go to get a little bit of XP, and then you work your way up. And I consider my friendship with you to be kind of a culmination of a lot of other XP grinding efforts. And then finally, I was able to defeat the final boss and become the friend of the monstrous Frank Eastman. So,
I'd like to think that I'm the Hammer Brothers from Mario.
I mean, you do have that fancy little helmet, so
that's true.
That's nice.
That's mostly to protect myself.
Protect that soft spot that never grew over.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's just like all bosses, all video game bosses have one weakness, and yours is the soft cranial opening on the top of your head. I'm sorry that we just put that out on the podcast. So
I was going to say, Derek, no. Now everyone will know where my giant glowing red spot is.
I'm the fucking Prima strategy guide on how to beat Frank Eastman.
That's it. Contra will never be the same again.
Making friends at work is something that I really enjoy. Maybe not necessarily because I am a little bit of an introvert. Like it's odd. I'm at my core am an introvert. So social interactions and things like that, they take it out of me. They drain my batteries more than a lot of things will. But I still enjoy it. And I still enjoy making those connections with people. So the beginnings of making friends with people is sometimes a little bit taxing on somebody like me who has a limited social battery, because it takes a lot of work to try to kind of find what different people like to talk about and things like that. Once you get over the initial phase of kind of figuring out who your buddies are going to be, then the work can begin of actually like making them not making. I'm not trying to be manipulative here, but putting on the charm and being likable and getting them to like you and finding out more about them and things like that. That type of thing I really enjoy. And a lot of times I build pretty strong relationships at work, and that turns into kind of an extension of my friend circle. And that kind of leads me into my next point. I have, and similar to you, most of my friends have been extensions of the people that I worked with in the past, and I hang out with them a lot. And a lot of them I hung out with them while I still worked with them. So, are there any concerns with hanging out with coworkers outside of work? So current coworkers that you work with, what are the pitfalls with hanging out with them outside of work?
Well, and this is I think the biggest sort of factor for me, and one of the reasons why I don't generally tend to easily make friends at work. Work is the kind of environment where I think, well, at least but a lot of people need to put on some sort of social construct, and
Right.
everybody's doing that constantly. Like there's
Kind of a facade, like projecting the self that you're supposed to be, type of thing.
right, and for me, there's a fairly significant difference between work Frank and not work Frank. Enough to
Namely the festive colored shirts that come on. You know, the times that I've been to your home, I mean, it has been just rampant with color and pizzazz and jazz hands.
oh
And
yeah, oh
it's
yeah.
really tasteful, but it is very, very vibrant.
I mean, Hawaiian shirts, I'm one of the few people, I think, if I can be so bold as to say it myself, that can pull off neon orange
So
in an eyeliner.
my only complaint is that most people who wear those types of things, who wear, you know, the Hawaiian shirts or the neon orange, are the people that say, I think I'm one of the few that can pull it off. And I'm just gonna go here and say it, Frank. Every one of them are wrong. Just in general.
Well, I'll take it under consideration next time I'm at Sephora.
No. The eyeliner part was not a part of that. The eyeliner, that's you, baby. You got that in one.
But so for me, it's kind of a long sort of sussing out period where, you know, yeah, you're getting to know people, because one of the things that I have to do as part of my job is navigate like working relationships with people who are very different from myself,
Right.
politically speaking, socially speaking, things like that.
I mean, physical size. Like,
That's true.
there's nobody that can match your sheer human presence in a room.
All of these wee tiny people.
You are Lord of the Lilliputians.
But and in having to navigate those sorts of relationships, it can take a while for me to be like, oh, this person seems to just, you know, sort of share my views. And I'm kind of naturally a private person, so I don't tend to offer up a lot about myself. And so for me, it can kind of be weird when people are like, hey, let me talk about what I did this weekend. And I'm like, cool, man. Yeah. Nah, my weekend was good. I I mowed the lawn. like that's it. That's the sum total of my you know, what I tend to divulge about myself. And not out of any particular sense of like secretiveness, like it's not even conscious. I just don't necessarily even think to share a lot about the inner workings of my psyche. And so it takes a while before I have warmed up to people.
I think you're right, and I suffer from that too. Suffer from the kind of building this like social facade. In my case, it's I don't know how many people do this, but I'm assuming most of them. I have essentially like different kind of masks that I put on for every person. Like, it's, you know, no two people get the same version of Derek. Because the thing is, at the end of the day, if anybody ever saw behind the mask and saw the real Derek, they would run for the fucking hills. Like, there is nothing of value that is not derivative. There's nothing about Derek that is not derivative of something else and kind of piecemeal together. I forget, there's a monster in some lore that like essentially just like takes bits and pieces of other things that it has encountered and makes, you know, it kind of glues it to itself. That's kind of my personality. Like, I am 100% referential in both my comedy and personality.
I mean, I
But
think to some extent that's everybody, though. Like, I don't think that's just you. I think everybody kind of maneuvers through the world with this sense that, you know, they're not necessarily an authentic being, and everyone else has to be an authentic being, and we're all just showing each other strange masks.
I mean, that's actually a good point. If everybody feels that way, then I mean, it's kind of like what we talked about with, the imposter syndrome at one point, where, yeah, you feel like you're the imposter, but everybody around you, unless they're just like the most narcissistic asshole ever, is also kind of feeling the same way. Like everybody has those uncertainties. So if this is the same with everyone, then it makes me feel a little bit better that my purely cobbled together personality is somewhat the norm, and that's great.
Don't worry, Derek. All of us go home at night, look in the mirror, and slowly peel off the skin face to reveal the lizard being beneath.
And that makes me feel so much better. So like I said, I build relationships pretty fast, and I enjoy interacting with people. Maybe not so much like I don't like go to hangouts all that often. Like it's very particular the ones that I do. But that doesn't mean that everybody doesn't get kind of invited to things that, hey, we're throwing a barbecue. Hey, we're going to the movies. We're going to the bar. Do you want to come? That brings me to the next portion of the segment. How do you say to someone, I just want to be work friends? Because, there may be other people in the office that you actually hang out with, like in your case, at, the place that we used to work. Me and you hung out, but I didn't really hang out with anyone else on the team outside of work. How do you tell somebody that other guy is cool and you don't have the same qualities that make me want to hang out with you outside of work?
Well, for me, I honestly just never mention it pointedly.
Okay.
So it was like, yeah, eventually you and I ended up, we started hanging out outside of the workplace on a fairly regular basis. And I never brought that up with anybody else.
I will say, Frank, I don't mean to, I don't want to derail. I just wanted to put a little pin in this one. I do feel like whenever I was invited to hang out with you and your friends, it felt a little bit like I was walking past an alley and somebody invited me to a speakeasy. Like, like it really felt like I was getting some sort of clandestine invitation. I was like, oh, what? Well, I can't say no. This is a rare opportunity. I don't get these type of surreptitious invites all the time. I did get that feeling a little bit.
And it's completely true, because I mean it's one of those things, like I do tend to overthink things anyway, but then I do tend to suss people out, as I said, for a really long time.
I mean, it was like a year after I started working there. I took a long time to marinate before you thought I was cool.
Yeah, being my friend and being in a secret cult are pretty much similar things. But so for everyone else, like I've never been like, oh, and that's one of the things. Like I'm just not very public about myself most of the time. So at no point was I like, oh, let me talk about all the cool things that I did with Derek within earshot of everyone that I didn't do them with. Like,
right.
That's just not who I am in the first place, and also not something that I would do, just because it would also reveal, sort of the fact that I wasn't going to hang out with certain people whose political spectrum I was not necessarily a part of.
Right. And also it kind of avoids that situation where somebody invites you to something, you say, I mean, basically like everybody does for anything that they get invited to ever, is they say, oh, I've got some family thing, or I'm going to die tomorrow, or whatever it takes to get out of the social...
Can't make it to drinks tonight. I am literally just going to turn into a corpse at 5 p.m.
Right. Which I guess is not too far from the truth. But you say, oh, I've got this other thing. I've got to go get my car worked on, and then you show up on Monday talking about the fun time you had, and that person walks up and is like, I thought you had to get your car worked on. It's like, uh-oh. Bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum.
That's why I tend not to, I don't lie about stuff. Like, it's not necessary. It's one of those things. I don't lie about a lot of stuff.
Friend.
I lie about fewer things than other people do.
Okay, there we go.
But I tend to, like, for me, the thing that I have found is just saying I can't or I am otherwise engaged is, most people aren't going to press you too hard. So, people are like, oh, hey, let's go do a after work social thing on Tuesday at 6. And I'm like, sorry, I can't. And I don't necessarily elaborate after that.
That is so simple, but it is something that I have the worst time doing. I don't know what it is. Whenever somebody invites me to something, like, and I occasionally, and I'm not saying that I do this all the time or never, but occasionally I will come up with something that is vague enough to not be an outright falsehood, but isn't necessarily 100% representative of the truth. But I just can't stop at, oh, I can't, or one of the more, maybe slightly more honest versions of I don't feel like it, or I'm tired, I'm going to go home. I have to give them a viable excuse, or not excuse, but a viable reason to basically make it seem like I don't, like it's not like I don't want to go, which it always is.
It is in fact that I do not want to go.
It is in fact that I don't want to go, not because I don't like them. Yeah, I mean, maybe sometimes it is. Maybe it's just like I'm the wrong crowd for whatever they're inviting me to do. But if I like them, which is a high chance that I do, I don't want to disappoint them. Like I don't want to make them feel bad. But at the same time, I don't want to be wearing pants. Like I want to go home where I can just walk in and what's that? Bruce Almighty. Just walk in the door and whoosh, and all my clothes are gone. That is 5:15 p.m. when I get home. But no, I have had to kind of had an intervention with somebody before, where they were a nice person, but it's kind of that niceness where you can tell that they are just. This was not an invitation just for me. Like they literally, everybody who they passed in the hall, they were like, hey, do you want to come, play cards? Hey, do you want to come play cards? Hey, do you want to come play cards? And like, at one point, I may have even seen them invite somebody else before they got to me. And eventually, I did kind of have to have a little bit of a heart to heart with them, which is super difficult for me to deliver bad news to people, or deliver bad news. Sorry, man, I can't come hang out with you. I know it's the worst news I've ever heard.
Listen, I've got super malaria, and it's incredibly contagious.
But I mean, I did have to basically be like, hey, man, you're cool, but I like what we got going on here. I kind of friend zoned him a little bit with the work situation.
You work zoned him?
I work zoned him. I put little orange cones around him.
Little stripy
caution tape. I don't know why that one tickles me so much. Like just breaking out the traffic cones and just blocking this person into their office.
I think there's a lot of women in the world that would like to be able to just put up some caution tape and some traffic cones, and that would be the end of it.
Oh yeah. Oh God. Can we make that a thing? Like just every lady has like some of those collapsible traffic cones in their pocket, so anytime something happens,
they can just work zone somebody.
Yeah, they just kind of like drop a few of the cones, like, oh, sorry, you can't walk here, this is a work zone. And then they flee from the establishment. All right, you want to take the elevator to accounting?
Yeah, let's take the elevator to accounting.
Cool. I'll tell you about all the new friends I found.
Oh, excellent.
All right, so today I wanted to introduce a new bit that we're going to be doing hopefully every episode, unless I am a terrible person and forget. But we're going to call it the Indie Podcast Corner. This is my opportunity, or Frank's if he happens to find a good one, just our opportunity to tell our listeners about some of the great independent podcasts that we have found in the past week or in previous weeks. And, I know that we've mentioned a couple of other podcasts that are really good, kind of collaborators, and they share our content and things like that. Like, What Does It Matter? Super Movie Brothers, More Gooder Than, The Pod Couple. So they kind of got their 2 minutes in prior episodes. Maybe we'll revisit them later. But just going to pick a new podcast every week and just kind of tell you guys about them and why I think you should be listening to them too.
All right.
And the one for this week is called Two Girls on a Bench. It's two lovely gals named Trisha and Shauna, and they essentially, I would assume they sit on a physical bench because they reference the bench a lot. So it's either just a really good mental gag or they actually are physically sitting on a bench.
See, and immediately I'm like, what's the mic situation like for that? Like, if we're both facing in the same direction, sitting on a bench, you'd get a lot of crosstalk.
Yeah, I would think so, but they pull it off. It actually, they have really great sound quality. So maybe this is more of a metaphorical bench of sorts. But yeah, they're both, I believe they're current writers. I think it would be untoward to call them aspiring, because I believe they write for plays and TV shows and things like that. But they're hilariously funny, and they talk about their kids, about their work, and they talk a lot about like snacks and stuff, which is right up my alley. Yeah, I will say the only part of their show that kind of gets my goat a little bit is they have this slide whistle. And it makes an appearance every now and again, and it's not distasteful. I would say, if anything, it's tasteful, as Derek, tasteful application of a slide whistle as I've ever heard.
I'm gonna go ahead and call you out there, Derek. I don't know as you can have tasteful slide whistle.
Well,
that's like tasteful full frontal, like.
But no, they are fantastic. They're super funny. If you like our banter, imagine that, but funny.
Well, shit, Derek. I think I'm gonna have to put a stop to this bit right now. Cut.
No.
All right, this is getting taken out. No, post. Goodbye. I don't want to start driving both of our listeners over to a better podcast.
All right. You can find them at Two Girls on a Bench, just like it sounds, on Twitter, or you can find them on all podcatchers.
You know, Derek, Oreo Thins.
They're pretty great, to be honest.
As far as snacks go, yeah, I have to say that I am surprised by how much I really like the Oreo Thins, because, they've got the double stuffed.
Right.
And the Oreo Thin is like the opposite of the double stuffed Oreo.
Right.
And yet somehow I like it much better.
Well, and the thing is, I think Oreo Thins were meant to be kind of a dieter's way to experience Oreos without like all of the calories. The problem is that my approach is to eat twice as many of them.
Yes.
So, and no. What I actually do is I take them and I stack them one on top of another, and I eat them. So it is literally I am recreating a double stuffed Oreo.
Oh, you've ruined the point, Derek. But yet I will also cede the point that that's probably really good.
Do you like craft beer?
Uh-huh. Do you like an unending wealth of puns? Uh-huh.
What about 4-hour lectures on the ethics of cryptocurrency usage in third world nations?
No!
Oh, right.
But do you still want craft beer reviews and comedy, right? Uh-huh.
Then listen to Hop Nation USA, a craft beer podcast.
Available on iTunes, Podbean, Google Music Play, and Stitcher. Are you shitting me?
No, I'm not. Just listen to the podcast. Hop Nation USA.
Where all fine podcasts are sold.
movies are bombing all over the country. They are posing as movies you already know. They may be in your theaters, your neighbor's home, or even your own.
Why are you doing that voice?
I don't know. I thought it made me sound cool.
It doesn't.
I'm Jason Bishop, host of the Invasion of the Remake podcast, with co-hosts Sam Stepanenko and Trish Coughlin. Join us each week as we rotate talking about your favorite films and their not-so-favorite remakes.
We'll also dig deep to find forgotten films that we think are more worthy of remaking, complete with our own fantasy casting.
You can get all 130 episodes and counting on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play Music, TuneIn, Radio, Player FM, and all the best podcast providers, even
Frickin' YouTube.
For the low, low price of absolutely nothing. Join the invasion. Subscribe today.
Or we'll blow up your planet.
All right, Derek, want to get to an audience question?
Let's do it.
I may want to begin job hunting soon. Every time I see resume templates, I see sections for hobbies and interests. Are there some hobbies I should not list, like playing Dungeons and Dragons or Magic the Gathering, or being into dance theater? Are there good interests to lie about and say I do have, such as sports or Bitcoin? Sent in by Resume Request in Reform.
So my first thought is that your instinct to not include D&D and Magic the Gathering, probably a good idea to leave those off. But at the same time,
I would disagree. Like, today's world, and it continues to surprise me, like the proliferation of, and I guess it shouldn't surprise me, like all the folks that are coming into their sort of career own right now are the nerds from 20, 30 years ago.
Right.
And now, like, to be someone who plays D&D is completely mainstream. Like,
right.
Actors are all like, oh yeah, I love playing D&D. There's like a humongous proliferation of actual play D&D podcasts.
Right.
There's D&D shows, all kinds of stuff like that. So I would almost say, like, used to 5-10 years ago, 100% that have been like, no, don't put Dungeons and Dragons as a hobby. You will be laughed out of the office.
Right.
But for some things, you know, some industries, it might be a positive now, especially something like software development. If you're
Right.
like an actual software developer, like my boss, I don't think it would have been a positive had I listed Dungeons and Dragons in my hobbies.
Right. And I think you have to play to the audience a little bit. You know, if you are going into an accounting firm, you might like that might be a Hail Mary to get to the one person who's cool in the company that might appreciate the fact that you had the fortitude to actually put that on a resume. But going back a little bit, you know, kind of backpedaling a little bit on what I said. To be honest, like if you're in a creative field or something like that, having Dungeons and Dragons experience may not be the worst, because if you actually now they would have to do some sort of like some sort of trial run where they would force you to play D&D with them, and if you were good enough at like the improv and the role playing, then I think that you would, you know, then prove your value to the company.
I think this is an opportunity to break out the 1970s Gen Con competition modules.
Okay.
And you're gonna have, like, that's gonna be part of the panel interview now. Is you're gonna have to make your way through Tomb of Horrors.
See, now you have exposed me to that in the not so recent or the not so distant past, and I did not experience that in my earlier days of playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I will say that's a stupid fucking set of puzzles. Like things that that could be mistaken for puzzles back in the day do not fly anymore. That was some obscure random bullshit that made sense to no one. Like,
you
they
say
were
this
just
now, Derek, but how many of those puzzles were the original puzzles, and how many of them were my own? Indeed, Derek.
I have since listened to an actual play podcast of the Tomb of Horrors, and the ones that I'm talking about are the ones that were also in theirs. So
Yeah,
those
no,
are some
like
dumbass puzzles.
the 1970s ones were pretty stupid. Whenever I run it, I tend to be like, yeah, no one's gonna get this. I'm just going to round this one down.
Did not take much to impress people back in the 70s and 80s, I suppose.
I mean, everything's an iterative process of getting better, I suppose.
Yeah, Gary Gygax took a couple runs at that one, and eventually we've got 5th edition, which is not too bad. But no, Magic the Gathering, I think, is actually not the worst thing.
I don't know, Derek. Like, I'm going to disagree with you again, and I hate to keep interrupting and doing this.
Okay, wait. So you disagreed when I said that D&D was not the best thing, and now you're disagreeing when I say that Magic the Gathering is an okay idea. Make up your fucking mind, Frank. Come on.
With Magic the Gathering, that's like copping to having a coke habit. Like, they know where all your money's going. It's going to booster boxes.
I mean, I guess that's fine, but...
You're just over there scratching, waiting for the next foil.
Man, cocaine's cheaper. That's all I'm saying. We talked about it in the last episode where I was planning on buying that case of booster boxes, and yeah, that's just not that is not conducive to having a home and having food on the table.
So yeah, if you're going into accounting, perhaps don't cop to Magic the Gathering, because then that's going to be the same as copping to having been arrested for drug possession or something, and they're going to be like, nah, this person's an embezzler.
Right. But the part of it that I think is actually somewhat applicable is the fact that if you are actually good at Magic, the strategy and I mean, I guess it's kind of the same as being good at like some really difficult board games like Risk and other things like that. It shows that you have a strategic mind and you're able to wrap your head around a lot of complex concepts, and there are a lot of shitty Magic players. Like I guess I'll consider myself kind of in that shitty category because I enjoy Magic, but I was never going to win a tournament with it or anything like that. Both because I did not have the money to buy the most expensive cards, but also because I just like shiny shit. Like I am the worst type of Magic player because I like the stuff they call them Timmy cards. Like they are cards that are meant to be, oh my god, this is the coolest thing ever. I'm gonna put it in the deck and hope it works. Like like if you're not in the pro circuit, like those are the cards you're buying. The cards that just make the game fun. And I don't know if you got the memo, Frank, but Magic was never supposed to be a game about having fun.
I learned that fairly early on, but I was never good at that. And my problem with Magic is sort of similar, but I think in narratives most of the time. So I'm over here having a real fun story that I'm telling with my deck, and nobody else is in on this story. And the story usually ends with me getting my ass kicked real hard.
It's like, so the elf goes into the clearing, and then he calls in the horde of boars, and then a fireball gets dropped on him, and he's burned alive. Oh no!
Pretty much.
No. I don't think I know how to play this game right.
I would say also hobbies that you should not list: taxidermy.
Yeah, you get a lot of weird stares if you're into taxidermy. Not because it's not an amazing art form. Like taxidermy, Jessica and I were actually watching Paddington last night. Look, Frank, wait, just 2 seconds. 2 seconds. Paddington has almost a perfect rating on Rotten Tomatoes. We're talking like at the time that I looked it up last night, like a fucking 97%. That is like top 10 movies on Rotten Tomatoes. And we were like, what is this about? Like, there's no way it can be this good. And it's a good movie. Like it is a well done movie, whether you're a child or an adult. But the villain is a taxidermist, and so they're all trying to like make her out to be real creepy, but we're just looking at it like, Man, that is some really fucking good taxidermy.
She's very good at her craft, but her
Right.
craft is evil.
I mean, I kind of wanted her to catch Paddington so that she could make a really good taxidermy out of him. I mean, is that wrong? Like,
isn't Paddington like a stuffed bear already? Isn't that the whole thing?
That's the same thought that I had, and I did not go back and look it up. But no, in the current iteration of it, he's a real bear that learned to talk by some sort of explorer to Peru.
Okay, so is he a full-sized bear?
No, the rest of the bears are, but he is a very small bear.
Oh, so the trade-off for being able to talk was being a pygmy?
No, he's like 5, Frank. Come on.
Oh, he's like a young bear. He's not.
Yeah,
like
he's not. He's not like some middle-aged bear. It's like, some guy, can I stay in your house? Come on.
I think I saw that movie. It was from the guy that did that did Family Guy, right?
No, that was Ted. That was another somewhat bear-related movie, but unfortunately for Seth MacFarlane, it does not have the same loving characters and story development that Paddington has.
It's not rocking a 97% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
No. But no, I mean, taxidermy is an amazing skill, but people are going to be a little bit put off by the fact that you're like scrounging around for dead animals on the side of the road and, you know, picking them up, going home and making some beautiful mantle furniture or mantle decoration out of it.
So are there any hobbies or interests that you would say are positives on your resume?
I am the worst possible person to ask this because up until like a couple years ago, I had one hobby. And it was literally video games. Like, honestly, I should have just put it down as work history because I was putting in a lot of fucking overtime in my full-time job of video games. I occasionally would pick up a guitar and could, you know, somewhat be misconstrued as someone who plays the guitar. But other than that, I had very few hobbies. I mean, other than like various nerdities, like what type of hobbies would you have that you would put on a resume?
I mean, the ones that I have on my resume are like narking on people who steal office supplies, cleaning up after others in the break room.
Sorry, I'm trying to think of something funny to say, but all I can think about is my recent experiences with people, and because I have not had a shared break room with this much like machinery in it that people share. There's the people I work with now, I love them, but they are a bunch of fucking barbarians. Like they're not filling up the coffee machine. They're just leaving shit all over the place. It's like,
so I mean, that would be a positive hobby on a resume. Cleaning up in the break room.
Tomorrow. I would hire you tomorrow if you would be willing to clean up after these motherfuckers. Oh my God. I'm living in a dorm. Jesus.
All right, Derek, you want to take an issue from the internet?
Yeah. I feel we didn't answer that last question, but do we ever?
I think that's the point.
All right, so this issue from the internet does not have a name, so we will call them Juniper. Wait,
Juniper Berry.
Juniper,
but Barry.
Yeah, I was about to say Berry Juniper. Juniper, comma Berry. There we go. Juniper, comma Berry says, would it be okay if I just read my boss's LinkedIn profile at the Boss Appreciation Day meeting at my company? Okay, the thing is, I got nominated by my coworkers to give a speech of appreciation for my boss by my coworkers, as none of them wanted to. Let me take another stab at that. I did not realize the sentence was going to end that soon.
The wrong emphasis on the improper syllable.
The thing is, I got nominated by my coworkers for giving a speech of appreciation for my boss by my coworkers, as none of them wanted to. The thing is, my boss is an arrogant jerk and not worth my out-of-work time to think up a speech, and I'm not getting paid for this. So I'm thinking, would it be okay if I just made the speech based on her LinkedIn with a 5-minute biography about her education, work experience, and whatever else is on her profile? Since I'm not going to waste my time writing something nasty about her and go on her level. I think a quick reading of her LinkedIn profile to the other workers would be a decent, respectful, and easy way to not waste my effort doing something I could not care less about. So, can this person, instead of writing something nice about their boss, just have a 5-minute fucking presentation on their LinkedIn profile?
Like, to do absolutely zero work, only if you don't like the job and this is your swan song.
Right.
But then again, if you don't like your job and this is your swan song, you might as well put some effort into it. But if you literally just open it up and are like, Helen Murphy, 25, manager at whatever company, like that, I don't think is necessarily going to fly overly well.
Yeah,
I would say
you kind of got to punch it up a little bit, I think.
Yeah, you're going to have to do a little bit of processing on it to make it work, but I do think that this is probably a gold mine in terms of, like, if someone is as narcissistic as a pain in the ass boss generally happens to be, then they're going to have collected all kinds of little accolades and such from coworkers that they have, sort of leveraged out of people. You can do that on LinkedIn, where you can, like, I worked with Kathy 15 years ago, and she was the best possible manager of anyone I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So, like, just scraping that shit, that would be beautiful. Like, I think that would work great. Like, if you punched it up just a little bit, put some framework around the stuff, you could probably get away with it.
Right. You could do some sort of like ad lib with it. Like
I mean, I think a Mad Lib would probably be easier than what Juniper was going for.
Right.
But I think it's also a definite possibility.
Yeah. Because I think you're right. I think that somebody who is narcissistic enough, like, would probably not understand that this was really more or less a slight. Like, they would kind of see it as like, oh, they're wanting to read my many accolades, whereas the rest of the people in the office are like kind of like wide-eyed looking at it. It's like, this person is just dragging our boss, and the boss is eating this shit up. Like, what's going on?
Now, if she has had to do any sort of publication, one of the standard things that you've got to do when you're going to be a presenter or you're being published in anything is they want you to write your own bio.
Okay.
Like, and what I'm thinking is, again, if this person is the narcissistic prick they seem like, it might actually be simpler and actually more pleasing to the boss to inquire as to whether or not she has a bio that she wants read.
I mean, you're not wrong. Like, it's like, oh yes, I've had it prepared for some time, just waiting for somebody to appreciate me in public. Here it is. Okay, so if you were in the situation, let's take the LinkedIn profile out of the equation. If you had to, and let's take the current boss out of the situation, because I don't want to get you in any trouble. If you had to come up with some sort of boss appreciation day presentation, you wanted it to be at least somewhat tongue in cheek. I mean, what would be a better way to kind of, send out those?
You do it in the format of a roast.
Okay.
And I mean that the roast is always a difficult thing to pull off, but at the same time, it's one of the few formats in which you can be completely honest about a terrible human being,
and everybody still laughs.
And everybody still laughs. I've seen it done badly. It's very easy to do badly, but I think at the end of the day,
doing a roast of grandma at her 75th birthday is probably not the right studio to do that in.
I mean, I've learned the hard way. It's not necessarily the best format for a eulogy, but
Oh, man. That's way worse than what I said. So my question is, if you're going to roast the boss, where do you get the material from? Like obviously you can kind of, come up with some of it on your own, like do a little bit of off the dome piece commentary on them. But if you actually wanted to get some relevant dirt, like, are you like, trolling Facebook, looking up for like exes or like previous coworkers? What are you going to do?
I mean, if you're roasting a boss, you already have all the information that you need close to hand, which is your
Right.
experience with them.
Yeah.
Because they're going to provide the material. Like, those things write themselves. It's not exactly a very difficult thing to go after in terms of mining content. It's figuring out how to present that content that's not going to get you summarily fired about 60 seconds later.
Yeah, making some sort of a uncouth joke about the boss's tiny penis is probably not going to go over well. I mean, you may be like a legend in the office, but it will definitely be posthumous. Like you will be gone overnight.
Yeah, it's best to spend about half of your time preparing for the roast and the other half of the time packing all of your shit into a box.
And we come back to the the question from the audience about what's put on your resume. Oh God.
Boss roaster. Although you don't want to put boss roaster and then taxidermist in the same resume. I think that that would have bad implications.
Not really want a scene you want to be in, to be honest. All right, you want to punch the clock?
All right, Derek, let's punch the clock.
All right, we want to say a big thank you to everyone that has sent in questions, shared our content on social media, or downloaded and listened to our episodes. We appreciate it more than you know, and please keep it up. Email or tweet us your questions or any funny issues from the internet, and we'll read them on air. Our email address is questions@wlicast.com. Our Twitter is @WLImbalance, and our Facebook is facebook.com/WLIcast.
This has been the Work-Life Imbalance Podcast. I'm Frank Eastman.
I'm Pounded the Butt by Derek Lewis.
And with that, I think we're going to have to transfer you. Pounded in the butt by my own podcast.
See, if I hadn't realized that was the name of the other, the actual podcast, I would have done that one, but I was like,
Yeah, can't mind that particular butt again.
I mean, nobody's been pounding the butt by Derek Lewis, so. We are forging new territory. You can cut that if you want. That's fine.
Oh, Derek, you know that's staying in. That's probably going at the front of the podcast.
That's our new promo.
That's the new lead-in, man.